Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 281 is almost here, and this is one of the most intriguing fight cards of the entire year. It is stacked from top to bottom with incredible fights. And on the prelims, I cannot believe this fight is on the prelims. We have Dominick Reyes versus Ryan Spann, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this light heavyweight fight. And there is a bunch of great fights on UFC 281. The main event is Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira for the middleweight title, and I'll be doing a bunch of UFC 281 prediction videos, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of those videos. But this is a very intriguing light heavyweight fight because you have Dominick Reyes, who at one point in time was considered the uncrowned champion of the light heavyweight division. You know, in his last two fights, has suffered brutal defeats, and now he's taken a long layoff, and he's coming back against a guy like Ryan Spann, who is a very dangerous opponent. And in this fight for Dominick Reyes, it's really do or die, because if he goes out there and gets starched by Ryan Spann, it is the end of Dominick Reyes' career. But if he goes out there and has an impressive performance, you know, the light heavyweight division, I know it's, you know, we have a couple contenders, you know, Magomed Ankalaev. We have Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira too for the belt next month at UFC 282. But Dominick Reyes puts himself on a short list of contenders in the light heavyweight division. And he could, you know, with a win here, he could be like one more fight away from a potential title shot in the light heavyweight division, which is absolutely insane. But if he loses again, it's effectively the end of his career. And for Ryan Spann, if he goes out there and beats a guy like Dominick Reyes, that will be the biggest win of his career. That will be the biggest name on his resume. And then people might start taking him seriously in the light heavyweight division and saying that he's a serious contender within the division. So if you look at the tail of the tape, Dominick Reyes is 12-3. Ryan Spann is 20-7. Reyes is ranked number 7. Spann is ranked number 12. Reyes is 32 years old. Spann is 31. Reyes is 6'4". Spann is 6'5". Reyes has a 77-inch reach, and Spann has an 81.5-inch reach. So a 4.5-inch reach advantage for Ryan Spann. So if you look at Ryan Spann, of his 20 pro MMA wins, he has 5 wins by knockout, 12 by submission, and 3 by decision. He has been in the UFC, came in off Dana White's Contender Series. So if you want to count, you know, his Dana White's Contender Series fight, he's been in the UFC since June of 2018. And, you know, he's kind of had mixed results. You know, he hasn't had that one massive win that kind of propelled him towards the top of the division. The best win on his resume, and it's not that good of a win, is Antonio Rogerio Nogueira, and that's back in May of 2019. You know, he brutally KO'd him, but what did that really mean at that point in time? His most recent fight was against Ion Cutelaba back in May of this year, where this was a fight where Cutelaba got tagged on the feet. You know, he got a couple takedowns, was able to control Spann on the ground for, you know, brief periods of time. But then when Spann was able to get back to his feet, Cutelaba was throwing, you know, crazy, you know, strikes, eventually falls to the ground from throwing combinations. And Spann jumps on a guillotine and guillotines him with absolute ease. Ends up in a mounted guillotine. Finishes Ion Cutelaba. The fight before that, he lost to Anthony Smith in September of last year. This was a fight where Ryan Spann was competitive in. He landed some good shots on Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith tagged him early, hurt him badly, ended up, you know, on top of him on the ground looking for submissions. Ryan Spann fought out of it and got back to his feet. They were back to some striking again. Eventually hurts Ryan Spann again, then gets his back and gets a rear naked choke in the first round. Fight before that, a TKO win over Misho Sakurnov. What does that really mean? That doesn't really mean much. And then the fight before that, he has a loss to Johnny Walker. That was back in September of 2020. He was in this fight. It was a wild, crazy fight while it lasted, but he eventually gets KO'd by Johnny Walker. And, you know, you look at his 2 losses within the UFC, both first-round stoppages, and you look back, you know, throughout his MMA career, his last loss outside the UFC, actually this was on Dana White's Contender Series. I forgot he was on Dana White's Contender Series twice against Carl Roberson. He was also finished in the first round via KO. You look back even further against Robert Drysdale. He lost in the second round, via rear naked choke here. So when he does get finished, he gets finished early in fights. You look at Dominic Reyes, of his 12 pro MMA wins, 7 by knockout, 2 by submission, 3 by decision. He's coming into this fight on a 3-fight losing streak. And, Reyes is kind of in a weird position because he was never really considered a great light heavyweight. And, he had some questionable fights. The Volkan Ozdemir fight, a lot of people thought he lost. That's all the way back in March of 2019. The Ovince St. Preux fight was just god-awful. And then Chris Weidman came up to light heavyweight. And this was at a period of time where you had Weidman, you had Jacare, you had a couple guys from middleweight moving up to light heavyweight. And basically, Jon Jones had no contenders at the time, and they were looking to stake their claim to a light heavyweight title shot. And Dominic Reyes went out there and starched Chris Weidman. And it was an impressive win at the time. I know it hasn't aged that great, but it was an impressive win. He brutally KO'd Chris Weidman in the first round. And he gets a shot at Jon Jones because there was really no other contenders. I think around the same time, I could be wrong, but I think around the same time was when Luke Rockhold got KO'd by Jan Blachowicz. And there's really no other contenders. So they gave it to Dominic Reyes by default. And he went out there and put on an excellent performance against widely considered the light heavyweight GOAT in Jon Jones. And most people thought that Dominic Reyes won that fight. It was a very close competitive fight. Could have went either way. It went to Jon Jones. Most people thought that Dominic Reyes got robbed. And then we have the Jon Jones curse. And that's where you basically lose to Jon Jones. And then afterwards, your career just goes to absolute crap. He gets a light heavyweight fight against Jan Blachowicz at UFC 253. And Jon Jones had vacated the belt. He said he was going up to heavyweight. Obviously that still remains to be seen. There was talk of Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes too, which obviously didn't come to fruition. So now the belt was vacated. So they give him a title shot against Jan Blachowicz for the vacant belt. And most people were picking Dominic Reyes going into this fight. I picked Dominic Reyes going into this fight. Jan Blachowicz beat the living shit out of him. He landed nasty body kicks, nasty punches. I mean, he just beat up Dominic Reyes and just outclassed him, broke his nose, busted him up, and eventually TKOs him in the second round. And it was crazy. I mean, Jan Blachowicz, don't get me wrong, he had a massive career resurgence. But to see him go out there and do what he did to Dominic Reyes at that point in time, and some people were saying, well, this is Dominic Reyes' first title defense because he won that fight against Jon Jones. And Blachowicz to go out there and just outclass him was unbelievable. And then after that, he gets Yuri Prochazka in Prochazka's second UFC fight. And this was a very competitive fight. Dominic Reyes landed some good shots in this fight. I think Dominic Reyes even took him down a couple times. But Yuri Prochazka and the pressure and the volume and the broken nose of Dominic Reyes. And Yuri Prochazka eventually just presses forward and lands a nasty spinning back elbow and brutally just flatlines Dominic Reyes face down. One of the scariest and most brutal KOs I've ever seen. And that's his last fight. That was in May of 2021. So he's been out for well over a year. And now he returns against Ryan Spann. Now, when I look at both of these fighters, I really think that this is a fight where the Dominick Cruz that we saw against Jon Jones would absolutely starch Ryan Spann. But the big X factor and question mark here is how good is Dominic Reyes still? And with the long layoff, with the damage he's absorbed, how is he going to be able to compete? Is he going to be able to take a punch? Ryan Spann is a massive fighter. He looks ginormous against most other light heavyweights. Most people even speculate Ryan Spann could probably fight at heavyweight. That's how big he is. So for this fight, I'm wondering, how is Dominic Reyes going to look after a long layoff, after 3 straight losses, and after absorbing so much damage in his last 2 fights? And that's the real question mark. And for Ryan Spann, he's kind of had mixed results. His resume isn't great. One thing I wanted to mention, he has a split decision win over Sam Alvey. A split decision win over Sam Alvey? I mean, that speaks for itself. I can't even say any more about that. So this is a very weird fight to pick because Ryan Spann has a brutal KO power. He has fast punches, but he just, he's not particularly great anywhere. Ryan Spann isn't some excellent wrestler. He has okay wrestling. He has okay striking. He has okay clinch work. He's just a big guy who has crazy knockout power. And that's why in this fight, for my official prediction, I am going to go Dominic Reyes via first round TKO. I just see that Spann, when he loses, he gets finished early. And I think Dominic Reyes, he's had a long layoff. You know, he might come out a little bit rusty, but I think still Dominic Reyes is leaps and bounds better. Unless he's fallen off a cliff, he is leaps and bounds better than Ryan Spann in the striking department. I think he can out-wrestle Ryan Spann. I am worried about the power of Ryan Spann because Ryan Spann will throw wild wingy punches. And if he clips Dominic Reyes on the chin, he could put him to sleep early. But I think he's going to come out. He's going to be a typical Ryan Spann fight where he kind of looks to pressure and land some wild winging shots. I think Dominic Reyes is going to clip him badly, drop him, and finish him on the ground with ground and pound, and kind of re-cement himself as a title contender in the light heavyweight division. You know, and for Ryan Spann, I think he has to get that first round KO. I think that's his only avenue to victory. You know, maybe he could finish him early second as well. But I think for Dominic Reyes, he can win any way he wants. I think he can win by decision. I think he can punch at range and just out-volume Ryan Spann. I think he can KO him or TKO him like I'm predicting. I also think, you know, Dominic Reyes, he only has 2 submissions in his MMA career, but I think he could hurt him and then end up getting this submission over Ryan Spann as well. I think all he has to do is avoid those big shots early. And I think Dominic Reyes, with his slick boxing, with his decent wrestling, I think he'll put it all together, and I think eventually he will clip Ryan Spann. I'm going to say late first round, he clips Ryan Spann with the right hand, follows him to the ground, and TKOs him with ground and pound. Late first round. That's my official prediction for this fight. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.